One day they're going to say, remember Tim Stevens? He was on the IT Misfit podcast. Look at him now. Look at him now.
Serving 30 years. Hard time.
Performing nightly in the
in the commissary of Folsom Prison. Welcome to my fellow Misfits, Matt Campisi and Tim Stevens. My name is Jerry Black. Let's get into it. The quote for today is by Joe Rogan. Comedy is not like any other art form in that it is very specialized and varied in its content, but it is generic in its title. This week we're sort of doing comedy about comedy. I don't know, for comedy, however you want to put it. We're talking through a few of the items from Jerry Corley's Breaking Comedy's DNA, which is his ebook on writing jokes. And so we thought this week, let's talk a little bit about how you write jokes. Of course, we're going to try and relate them to IT, but more importantly, to make them funny. And then we're going to work through each of those. And then hopefully at the end of the week, we've got some good bits, a little bit of good sets to work on. Let's talk a little bit about simple truth. So this is a Jerry Corley. I don't know if if you looked it up other places, other people have this term, but this is Jerry Corley for us. And it's when you take a sentence or a phrase that has an intended meaning, but it's interpreted by a comedian as an alternate explicit meaning. So the most basic of that is hey, can you call me a taxi? And the person turns and says, okay, you're a taxi. Matt actually did it there with the Bert and Ernie, in that he takes what seems to be the obvious, he's going to make fun of Bert and say Bert and Ernie. And then he throws out two other not so obvious Bert duos. So that's the concept there. With that said, Matt, Tim, do you have any other simple truths that are, at the tip of your tongue or anything along those lines?
So it is the Bert and Ernie one. I mean, the name Bert in my instance, or this instance of the show, is such a unique name. And how many Berts do you know? I mean, that is a very unique name. So I'm interesting that we were practicing that for our show, and that's going to be the highest ranking exec. I think that's what a lot of us do as a when you're out with friends, or when you're in a business environment and you're trying to punch up a meeting, because that's one of the goals and the mission of this show is to help people be more confident, maybe bring comedy in the workforce. I kind of feel like that's one of the examples we do the most, Jerry. Like it's the server, or like, let's have another outage window this weekend so we can take down the network, not get the network fixed. The simple truth is, we all know outage windows go poorly, and we're going to take down the network, not improve the network, as an example.
Yeah. Or, hey, we're going to do a change control this weekend. At the end of it, nothing will have changed, and there is absolutely no control. Right.
The other thing, and another example I love, as you being an MC, Jerry, of live shows, of working the crowd, you go through this, getting the crowd riled up. Let's practice our claps, like, okay, golf clap, and then really clap, and then you are about to have the crowd go yet again, and you stop them. You're like, oh, no. Oh, the change control got delayed. Like, that is such a simple truth in the IT world, that nothing seems to go according to plan, which the crowd, being an IT focused crowd, all get that. Like, when you're about to clap and you are stopped, and so I think that it just is the reference that we all are familiar with, especially when we do IT comedy.
So reading through, and I literally just did. Shame on me for not reading this last night. Reading through it, Jerry Corley mentions that it's a lot like double entendres. But I guess for you guys to kind of help me really understand what simple truth is, help our listeners understand it, is it just simply you telling the obvious, or getting to what sounds like I'm going to say the obvious, like Bert and Ernie in Matt's case, but then pulling the audience in a different direction and using another name of Bert Reynolds was the other on you. So it's simply going after the truth. The crowd is moving with you. And then right before you get to the obvious statement, you pull them in a different direction. Is that kind of how you guys see it? And that's where the comedy comes from.
Yeah, that was how I saw it.
Yeah. One of the examples. Yeah. So Tim, if you have it up, there was one example about, a waitress bringing you something and using the word head, HEAD, which he says is an anatomy, or on a beer, if you pour a beer from a really bad keg that has a huge head of hair, head of, not hair, has a big foam. I'm thinking about your ball joke, Jerry. Has the big foam, and he does a switcheroo where, hey, the head waitress brought over something, and you have to kind of draw the parallel, or you get thrown off on what he was really trying to say, because all of us went there to either the head of beer or thinking head on your shoulders, not the waitress is the top of is the boss, or the general manager is in the head waitress. So I like that kind of just example. That's a quick one that has like 3 different meanings depending on the audience members of where they take it. And it's funny with either one, right? If you switch it up and you were thinking head of beer, meant something else. Oh no, I wasn't meaning that. It was just the waitress was the head waitress, and she was the best of the group.
I think it depends too on, you kind of alluded to it, the audience, right? So if we say bald to a room filled with discount tire employees, whether they actually flipping those tires on a daily basis, or they're supporting the voice system for those sites to flip tires, everyone's head is immediately going to think about, when you say bald, that's what I mean. But Jerry, he presented the joke about an old bald guy, maybe bald girl, that, in that context, that's where the funny comes from, because he's taking an aged IT guy or an aged employee and then describing them as bald, and then you have tires that are bald, right?
Yeah, the only thing I don't know is the, like, how is it different? You get in kind of these nuanced things with Corley sometimes, where that's a simple truth versus that's a double entendre versus that's, and I don't know is that any of that particularly matters. I like to use Corley stuff to kind of go through any, I kind of do the story and anything I've written out, and then go, could I use a simple truth here? And then kind of look at what he's talking about, look at his examples and say, that I actually could use there. But I think in the IT world and in meetings and things of that nature, the idea would be, anytime somebody says, it's almost anytime somebody says almost anything, is there well, they said these words, could I use those some other way? The server, right? Hey, yesterday, the server went down, and I'll tell you, I felt bad how bad that guy tripped. Just something basic like that, right? Even in a meeting or anything along those lines. Think of all the terminology that we use, all the acronyms that we use, and you could leverage those. I think all day you could make different quote unquote simple truths or double entendres, and hopefully add a little bit of levity to a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm really glad he broke it down at simple truths instead of double entendre, because that's just such a tough one to spell. And like simple truths, I give
you write on your 3x5 cards. You're like, my punch is going to be a double entendre.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't double entendre here.
And then you can't even spell it, so it's like phonetically sounded out. You're like, double entendre, and then you're like, what is a double entendre again? Is that like an analogy, or is that a alliteration? And then, what the hell is a literate? Yeah. So kudos to you, Jerry Corley, for keeping it simple with simple truths.
Nice. All right. And he does talk about how they brings forward, he talks about then the triggers that simple truths can bring. And that's the other thing that I think is neat about his ebook, is he does get into almost the science of why people laugh at that. And so how do you know that people are going to laugh at it? Well, because it hits a couple of these triggers. All right. With that said, that's our time for today. I do want to thank my fellow Misfits, Matt Campisi and Tim Stevens. My name is Jerry Black. Have a wonderful day.